Sentence diagramming is a method of organizing the biblical text that has been used for many years by hand. Logos has a tool designed to help create the diagrams, as well as export and share them with others. Sentence diagrams allow us to organize the text, slow down as we examine the text, and see where our pre-understandings are possibly at a tension with the text. Sentence diagramming is not easy, but when done in community, it is very useful. To start, we'll create a sentence diagram. Click on Documents. And while we're in Documents, in our last video we looked at a visual filter, and you'll see they're listed here. I have a lot of them. Hopefully you don't have that many because you delete them if you're not using them, or you can have that many if you want. So if I click here, there's what we made last time. We made the Fall 2015 visual filter NT. And there are also sentence diagrams here. But to create a new sentence diagram, we'll click on Document and click on Sentence Diagram. This always opens a new window. It doesn't just open in a tab, it opens a new window. That's just how Logos does it. So I'm going to move this over because as I'm working in it, I also want to be able to see my ESV text. The new window that popped up says Untitled Sentence Diagram 2. We're going to start by changing that. We'll be looking at Philemon 14 through 16 today, so I'll put that in and then hit enter. And we just have this blank canvas, and so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit insert passage, and then we're going to type again Philemon, misspelled it, Philemon 14 through 16. And then for our purposes, because we're using the visual filters in the ESV, we want to say ESV, and then we want a text flow diagram. I did something wrong there, pardon me. So Philemon 14 through 16. And now we just click Insert. The text appears below. When the text comes in, one of the first things I like to do is if you scroll over it, you see these two blue bars come on either side. I like to stretch that out as far as I can so I have more space to work, and you'll see why that's important as we go. But now that the text is here, there are a number of things we can do to manipulate it. We can, if I click on a word like preferred, I can click and hold and I can drag it around. I could drag that there, and then I could drag nothing here. And I can quickly start to put things wherever I want them to go. And then if I realize I don't want to do it, I can click and hold, and I can move it all back together by just dragging it back up. While you're doing this, one reassuring thing, so the word preferred here, I can never go above the word I can never put things out of order. As you're diagramming, if I take this here, the word to will never go before preferred, because in the English ESV, it does not ever, or it's in this order. And so don't worry about accidentally putting the text out of order as you work. It won't happen because Logos has a safety for that. So you can also, as you're looking at this, you can go under text, you can bold a word, you can color word red, you can color it different ways, you can align things differently, you can change the font, you can change the size. Those are all available. In Dr. Wang Leising's class, he has some rules that he'll have you follow for different types of verbs and for conjunctions where you'll change either the color or the size. You also have these options over here on the left. You can use text if you want to add text. For instance, it's always good to have a legend, and so it's nice to insert that, and then as you go, when you decide things, you can just, so if I want to make all conjunctions 2 sizes bigger, I would say conjunction 12 font. And then if I click on that, I can put this here, and then I can actually attach it to the legend. And so now if I click on those together, I can put that down here somewhere. So if someone else is looking at this, they know how I made my decisions. And so that's a useful thing. You can also use all these symbols. If you're trying to line things up, you can use a line if you click on it and then click and hold. You can make a line, and then if you're trying to align words perfectly, you can do that. There's all kinds of things you can do with this. So as we're doing this, one of the important things is that we need to follow a set of rules. In Dr. Wong-Lee Singh's class, he gives a set of rules to follow, and it's very important to follow these, because if you're working on something and someone else looks at what you're working on, they need to know why you're interpreting something a certain way, or at least understand the structure by which you're putting things in order. And so the first rule that we will use is we want to make sure that each verb is on its own line. And so if we have our text here, or we have our diagram here and we have our text here, we can see right away that the word preferred is a verb. And then the next verb down is be. And so preferred and be could not be on the same line. Now, how we put these is important, because, for instance, things that are closer to the left will, just the way that we look at things, it'll look like they have more, or they're more important. The things more to the right, it's just like in a Word document. If you push tab, it pushes you over, and it's a subordinate thought. So this is the thing we're doing here, though, is we're trying to see how these verbal ideas interact. Are they equal? Is one subordinate? Is one being contrasted with the other? If we think the verbs preferred and be are equal, we might line them up together as close as we can. Sometimes you have to kind of work to do that, but so you'd line it up, and I would probably do something like that to line it up. So I might say I think these are equal. Or if I think the word be is not equal, I might do something like this to show it's not equal, it's subordinate. So I'm not giving you right answers right now, I'm just showing you the features of Logos. We're trying to look at the text and we're trying to make decisions. As we organize the text and make decisions, we want to keep those verbal ideas on separate lines. We also want to color them differently. For instance, if you're working on finite verbs, we want them to all be the same. If we're working on infinitives, we want them to be the same. And if we're working on participles, we want them to be the same. You have a set of rules to use for that. But so if these are both finite, I believe that is red. So I'm going to make them both red. We also want to look, or we might also want to separate things further if we think a new segment begins. So let's say, as I'm reading this, I say, I think B, this B that's here, starts a whole new idea. There's a boundary here, and I see segmentation. I would want a double space. I want to put that space to say, these are separate ideas. Hopefully you would never do that in the middle of a sentence, but this is just to show you the difference. If it's here, you're saying these are connected. If it's here, you're saying these are different thought units. So the next thing we want to do is we want to look at conjunctions, and we want to put conjunctions on their own line as well. The reason for this is that conjunctions are connectors. The way they work is they're connecting in some way, shape, or form. They're connecting verbal ideas together. And so the word but is a conjunction, and so I'd put it on its own line. And then there's also in order that would go on its own line. And so I would need to start doing this. And then as I'm looking at this, I need to figure out the word that. I need to figure out where that connects. What is it hinging? Is it I preferred? Is that where the connection's going? Is it without your consent in order that? We need to figure out where we think that conjunction is hinging things. And so we do that and then put this below. We also, as we're working on this, we also want to line up similar ideas or phrases. And so, for instance, in Philemon, there's bondservant and slave occur quite a few times. You'll see down here it's there. But also, so if the word bondservant's here, if this is where I wanted it to be, I would want to try and line up bondservant each time. And earlier in the text, if there was one, I might line it up here as well. So as I'm looking, I see the theme throughout the discourse of the word bondservant. Now, obviously, this is starting to look a little ugly. I'm not trying to, again, I'm not trying to give you the right answers. I'm just trying to show you what you can do here. Now, as we're doing this, there's something else we have to look at, and it's we looked in our last video at the inline interlinear tools. Oh, I just lost my bummer. Here we go. The inline interlinear tools here are, we get to see this line, which is the manuscript. It's the original text. This is the Greek text. And when we look at this, we need to recognize what some of these symbols mean, because these symbols actually tell us more. For instance, you see these numbers here. And actually, to do this, I want to make this bigger so it's easier to read. So I'm going to click up, and then I'm going to make sure I'm in Philemon 14. And then I'm just going to move this tab out of here and move it down because that's getting confusing. There, much easier. But so there are numbers next to all of the Greek words on the manuscript level. What these are is these numbers refer to the order in the Greek. And so the numbers would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or however many numbers there are. But in the English, they've reorganized them, and based on how it was translated in English. And so verse 14 in English says, "But I preferred to do nothing." In Greek, it wouldn't look the same at all because the word "but" is the second word in the sentence. Preferred is actually the 7th word in the Greek order. Do is the 8th. Nothing is the 6th. Now, this is how these were decisions made by the translators in order to make the text make sense in our language. Greek and English aren't one-to-one languages where there's an exact Greek word to every Hebrew word, as we'll see. So as we're looking at this, we just have to be aware of that. But this tells us the order in which the Greek language was. And further, as we're looking at this, you'll see these arrows here. These arrows, they can point right. They can also, you'll see down here, the your points left. These arrows actually point to words that in the Greek language are not needed. They're supplied in the English because in the Greek language they're together. And so it says, "But I preferred" here. So I preferred, there's a arrow, and I points to, or the arrow points that way. I is actually part of preferred. And so if I was over here in the text, I broke up I preferred before, but that's actually not right because in the Greek language, the I is actually part of that verbal idea. And so I would want to make that red, and I would not want to space those away from each other. And you'll notice all my stuff just went out of line. You get kind of used to that, and you just have to work on fixing it as you go. So it can be fun sometimes. But so now I've put I preferred together because they should be together. And then I also just noticed there's a double line here, which means this word do, and actually to do, is actually an infinitive. And so I would not want that on the same line as I preferred. I would probably want that as a subordinate. And then I would believe, I'm not sure what color they are in yours, but I believe it's blue. And so I'm going to make it blue. Get both of them blue. So that's the first thing that you'll see in this. It's called the reverse interlinear line. You'll also notice, as we scroll down, here's another one. The word might has it's like a heavy arrow pointed to the right and the number 17. What that heavy arrow means is that there's actually a space between, it's not connected directly, it's connected to the word 17, but there's a word between it in the way it's ordered. And so the word might with the 17, you look at 17 and then you say, all right, what word is 17? And it's be. So might be are the same verbal idea, but this heavy arrow is here because the word not needs to be there in the English in order for it to make sense in English. So if I were to go to be, well, already look at this. I've got these out of order. I would want to make sure they're on the same line because they're the same idea. I would also want to color might. So now those are together even though there's a word between them. And I wouldn't color that word because it's not part of that verbal idea. There are also, if we scroll down, the other thing you'll see is in verse 15 it says, "For this perhaps is why he was parted from you." You'll notice from you both have these little black circles. These black circles actually refer to, it's a word that was supplied in the English, but it's not in the Greek at all. And these can work both ways. You can actually, we don't have any right here, but you can see a black circle in the English and see a Greek word there. It's something that one language may need and the other language doesn't need at all, but the translators made the decision to include that. And so when we see these, we want to make sure that we label them in some way, because we don't just want these to be missed. And so the way that we do that is we put in brackets. So you'll see there's a left bracket and right bracket. And so for this is perhaps why he was parted. I'm just going to move this down while I'm working on it, but I would want to put in a left bracket, and then if I click on the little corner I can shrink it down. Oh. And then I can drag it, and then I want to put in a right bracket and do kind of the same thing on the other side. And this, for somebody else who's looking, and for myself, this signifies that there is, I'm having some trouble here. This signifies that, come on. From you, this signifies that these were not there in the original language, and you'll just have to play around with it a bit to get it right where you want it, to where it looks nice and formatted. I would not turn in something like this, but for now, the video is long enough. So we want to make sure we're looking at the reverse interlinear as we go. We want to make sure we're noting these things, and it's very important that you look at the whole verbal idea, because if you were to just look at this and say be, you're missing might, and might be, it's a subjunctive. It's a lot different if you say, oh, he's going to be an astronaut, he's going to be, or if he might be an astronaut, it's a little bit different. Hopefully you guys can all see that. And so we want to make sure we're looking at the reverse interlinear as we go. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to export this. So hopefully you have something much prettier than this. But when you finish, you want to click on the icon for sentence diagramming, and then print export. And then we want to click fit to page. And if you scroll up, you'll see it's all on one page. And then we want to click save as PDF document. And then Philemon 14 through 16. And then save it wherever you want to save it, and click save. If you're on a PC, you might need to use a program called QtPDF. It's as simple as going to qtpdf.com, and there's a free download for the QtPDF writer. Once you install it, restart Logos, and then you should be able to just print out like what I just showed. It'll just give you an option for QtPDF. So that's the basics of sentence diagramming. Remember, this is it takes a lot of practice to do this. I'm kind of out of practice right now, but it's a new skill. And sentence diagramming, even though it takes time to learn, the results are worthwhile. Seeing the passage structured out allows for a deeper level of thinking, and it also helps expose where we structure the text wrongly, and it shows where we're assuming things that maybe aren't there. And it helps us when we're in community to be able to talk on the same level and see how other people are looking at the text. Thank you.